music and more. Follow, subscribe, stay up to date. Episodes dropping one of these days. It's the Matt, watch that. It's the Matt, watch that. It's the Matt, watch that podcast.
Welcome to the Matt Watch That podcast, the place for reviews, rants, and randomness. I'm your host, Matt Seroski, filmmaker, film fan. This is a special edition of the podcast where we will be talking about Stranger Things Season 5. If you haven't seen it yet, spoilers ahead. To join in on the conversation, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Matt Seroski. You can subscribe to my YouTube page where I'll post videos and clips from the show. If you have any opinions on what I've discussed, or suggestions as to what I should see next, use the hashtag MattWatchThat on social. Frequent listeners of this podcast will know that I am a big fan of Stranger Things. Now I'll give you a little bit of the Cliff's Notes version of my Stranger Things journey. When the show was released back in 2016, it wasn't the worldwide phenomenon that it is today. In fact, the show grew throughout the first 2 seasons through word of mouth, and that's how I got on board. At that time, Netflix was still in the business of DVD by mail movie rental service, which is what I had. But Stranger Things was exclusive to their fairly new streaming platform. So I wasn't aware of the show until my coworkers started talking about it. They all told me the same thing. Matt, this is right up your alley. You'll love this show. But I was still enamored with their DVD by mail service. So how did I get into the show? Well, I work in the entertainment business, and during award season, all the studios, production companies, they send out FYC screeners for your consideration to everyone who are in the guilds. Writers Guild, Producers Guild, Directors Guild, etc. And when the executives are done screening, they'll usually leave out the DVDs for other people to enjoy. Some companies like Hulu would only give out a couple of episodes, usually the 2 or 3 that they felt were the strongest. But Netflix would give away their whole season. And since I didn't have their streaming service, whatever screeners I saw from them, I snatched them up like a kid with candy at Halloween. And the first one on the list was Stranger Things. Now, I went into this series completely blind. I knew nothing about the storylines, the characters. I might have had a vague recollection that Winona Ryder was in it, but for the most part, this was a clean slate for me. So I took the DVD set back to my desk, put it into my computer. Yes, this was at a time when laptops still had DVD drives, and I started watching the show. Within 30 seconds, I was hooked. That opening scene, where the scientist bursts through the doors, runs down the hallway as the alarms blare, goes into the elevator like Hicks in Aliens, presses the button, nothing happens. Then, as the doors finally close, you hear that strange sound, and the scientist gets sucked up into the elevator by this unseen being. In my head, right then and there, I was in on this show. Then that was followed by the kids playing D&D in the basement, Will getting taken, the scene fades to black, and it goes into that unforgettable theme song. After watching that title sequence, I remember pausing the DVD and saying to my coworkers who recommended the show months beforehand, I love this series. That was it. That's all it took. 2.5, 3 minutes. I knew it. Now, 10 years later, with 4 seasons in the books, we are on the verge of the final season. This part of the podcast is being recorded prior to its release, and I'm going to record my thoughts after I watch each volume. Now, to give you some idea of where I stand on Stranger Things, I'm going to rank the first 4 seasons from my favorite to my least favorite. At number 1, we have Season 1. In my opinion, it's absolute perfection. The acting is really strong, I'm engaged with all the characters, but what I like most is that you get a sense that this is a larger story in general, but it still feels very small. It's about a cop trying to cope with the loss of his daughter, a mother trying to find her lost son in a town that doesn't believe her, and the effect that this one event has on the community, Will's friends, classmates, and neighbors. It's a fairly straightforward story that continues to unravel and gets deeper and darker as you go. At number 2, we have Season 3. Now, I don't pay too much attention to social media, but I didn't realize until recently, especially this last interview cycle, that a lot of the cast and many of its fans don't like Season 3. And I kind of get it. If you were to skip that entire season, the main storyline remains a bit unchanged. But in my opinion, Season 3 delivers on all the aspects of what the show is about. This season encapsulates the 80s, from the hair to the clothing, the soundtrack, the movies, the mall culture, and the threat of a Cold War. To me, it's an 80s summer blockbuster. It's an 8-episode popcorn flick. I think my favorite part of the season is that the group is together. That's what I enjoyed so much about Season 1, which I felt was lacking in Season 2, and we'll get to that. But I love the addition of Robin. She's a bit quirky, really funny, and adds so much to the Steve-Dustin dynamic. I also liked that Eleven and Max came together as friends. That was something that bothered me at the end of Season 2. Max still didn't feel like part of the group. This season, she's fully integrated. On a personal note, I have to say that this season was the one that made me fall back in love with 80s music. The soundtrack was incredible. I hadn't thought of Cutting Crew or Corey Hart or Howard Jones in decades, and the way that those songs and others were used in the scenes were just perfect. Now at number 3, we have Season 2. By this point, I was totally on board. I had Netflix streaming. I wasn't going to miss this premiere. But I will admit, I was a little disappointed the first time that I had binged Season 2. And the reason was, as I mentioned earlier, because the group wasn't together. Part of the charm of the first season and the third season is that, for the most part, everyone is together. Having Elle being separated from the group for 7 3/4 of the season was a bit of a drag. On the positive side, I really love the addition of Max. Her character is really strong, she added something to the group, and I knew early on that Sadie Sink was going to be a superstar. But it did take me a couple of binge watches for the season to grow on me. My other big problem, outside of the one episode that everyone has a big problem with, The Lost Sister, is that I didn't like that there wasn't closure to Max's storyline. Up until the very last episode, Mike was still treating her like crap, saying, "Oh, you're not part of the group." And then when she meets Elle for the first time and tries to shake her hand, Elle totally gives her the cold shoulder. I thought what they could have done is, at the snowball, when they see Max dancing with Lucas and see that she's no longer a threat, maybe Elle gives her a little smile, or Mike kind of gives her a knowing nod. Something to show that she's accepted. And we really didn't get that until Season 3. I also want to give a special shout out to Season 2 for the snowball scene. I thought it was such a great moment when Nancy dances with Dustin. My heart was breaking for him and his overly sprayed bouffant hair. Nancy really stepped up to the plate, and I felt it was a nice full circle moment to the first season when Dustin offered her pizza in the first episode and she shuts the door in his face. At number 4, we have Season 4. In the words of Mr. Costanza from Seinfeld, "I've got a lot of problems with you people, and now you're going to hear about it." I have rebinged Season 4 a couple of times now, and my like of the season just hasn't grown. I think some of the problems that I had with Season 2, I could get over, to the point where I think it's just a tick below Season 3. But Season 4 had too many things that bothered me that I don't think I'm going to be able to get over. From a technical standpoint, I thought the episodes were too long. The pacing just felt off. I would be watching, and it would feel like it was progressing to a natural end. And it would even cut to black, but then pick up with another scene, and the episode would last an additional 20 minutes. It was like playing with my head. It was also to the detriment of the storylines. Like, for example, we'd be with the California crew for a scene. Then you'd have all these other scenes, and 30 minutes later, we'd come back to the California crew, and I'd be like, "Oh, I almost forgot you were in this episode." But my biggest problem in the season, and I know I'm in the minority for this, but I didn't like any of the new characters. I get it, people fell in love with Eddie. I was not one of them. I didn't like his character. I felt his relationship with the boys was a bit forced, and Dustin's godlike idolization of Eddie felt out of character. So when it led up to the finale, and Eddie kicks the bucket, it had zero impact on me. I know people online were crying, setting up vigils. Not one tear from me. Now, before anyone thinks that I'm a monster, I did bawl in the scene with Lucas and Max. I lost it. But Eddie wasn't the only one. I couldn't care less about Chrissy. It didn't matter to me if she woke up. I didn't like Argyle. And I know you're supposed to hate Jason, but I physically hated Jason. I didn't like the character. I didn't like how the actor portrayed some of his lines. I don't know why anyone in the school or any of the townspeople would follow him. He gave the least credible rah-rah speeches I've ever heard in my life. I'm so glad he got nixed. But that's not to say the whole season was bad. I just didn't love it. Season 4 does have the best episode in the series so far, which was, of course, Dear Billy. Literally everything worked in that episode. All the criticisms that I had for Season 4 does not apply to that episode. All the storylines had significance, they were all paced out so brilliantly, and obviously, the scene with Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush was such a perfect complement to the visuals that were happening. And yes, another scene where I bawled. So those are my thoughts and feelings on Stranger Things Season 1 to 4. We'll see if my opinions change with Season 5. Now I'm heading off to watch Volume 1. Alright, so we're going to start this thing with Chapter 1, The Crawl. In 1987, 19 months after the Rifts incident, the U.S. military, led by Dr. K and Lieutenant Akers, have placed the town of Hawkins under quarantine and created a base camp within the Upside Down, still on the hunt for Eleven, who trains in hiding with Hopper and Joyce. Steve, Robin, Jonathan, and Nancy work at WSQK, a local radio station, where they relay coded messages to the group about opportunities to sneak Hopper into the Upside Down, that they call crawls, to find Vecna's hideout. Dustin, still reeling from the death of Eddie, visits his gravesite and is beaten up by members of the basketball team, causing him to miss the next crawl, which goes awry when the military caravan is attacked by a Demogorgon, forcing Hopper to take shelter in the Upside Down. Will telepathically witnesses the events and sees the creature heading toward the Wheeler house. This was a fantastic start to Season 5. The hardest thing to do as a writer is exposition. It's where you have to give the audience a lot of information to catch them up to speed. But it can't be deliberate or obvious. You have to weave it into the scene in the most interesting way. My favorite bit of exposition happens in The Great Muppet Caper. Miss Piggy wants to become a fashion model and is in the office of Lady Holiday, who is a famous designer, played by Dame Diana Rigg. Lady Holiday is going on about her irresponsible parasite brother Nicky and her valuable jewel, the baseball diamond, to the point where Miss Piggy interjects and says, "Why are you telling me all of this?" To which Lady Holiday replies, "It's plot exposition. It has to go somewhere." That brings me back to this episode. I love the idea of Robin as her DJ persona, Rockin' Robin, talks about the events of Hawkins over the past 2 years, because when we last saw our favorite haunted town, it was split into 4 pieces. I didn't feel like I was being lectured, even though I knew this was the plot exposition scene, because the dialogue felt natural. Now, on to something that felt completely unnatural. I'm not sure where the boys learned to trash talk, but when they came to the rescue of Dustin, who was being bullied, I was not intimidated one bit by Lucas, Mike, or Will. They're all very wafy, and it seems like a swift breeze could knock them over, so I'm not sure why the bullies retreated. I like that Dustin is lashing out. He's obviously having a hard time coping with Eddie's death, but this does lead to another awkward encounter. When he goes to visit Eddie's gravesite and is again confronted by these bullies, the dialogue is a little funky here and leads to an unintentionally hilarious moment. As each bully approaches, they say something that's supposed to strike fear into Dustin, but I think the Duffer Brothers ran out of steam. Bully number 1, you should really keep a better eye on your pets, Henderson. Alright, not bad. Bully number 2, it's dangerous out there. They shouldn't be left alone like that. Not bad, still strong. Bully number 3, hey there, freak. Long time no see. A little stereotypical, but passable. And bully number 4, hiya. Oh yeah, he said hiya. Hiya. I even put on the closed captions to confirm it. Hiya. Exactly like that. This is the way I'm gonna greet everyone in 2026. I do have some other quibbles about the dialogue. When did Elle learn to speak in perfect dialect? She was on a Trump-level vocabulary, even when attending school in California. So for her to be chatting away like a regular teenage girl felt a little weird to me. Sure, it's been a couple years since we've seen her, but we had 4 seasons where she's talking like Captain Caveman. Elle uses the name Henry, but I wish Joyce or Hopper would acknowledge him. Hopper even refers to Vecna as Henry. According to the play, they went to school with Henry Creel. He was the lead in a play that Joyce put on. Now granted, Henry is a pretty common name, especially when they were growing up in the 50s, but I can't imagine in the past 2 years there hasn't been a conversation about the Creel family and his connection to the parents. But this is all nitpicky. I already like Season 5 better than Season 4. I love that the groups are together and interacting. Yes, they have their own little cliques, but it all works. The idea of having Robin using cowords over the radio airwaves to communicate with the various groups was clever and well done. There were 3 moments that stood out to me. While on watch, Lucas saying, "Snipers chew gum." I don't know why I found that hilarious. He said it like an 80s action film starring Stallone. Steve calling Will's neck tingles goosies. I don't think they've ever said that before in the show, and I just found that so funny. And last, Will getting his first glimpse of Demo Vision. And like most episodes, it ends with a cliffhanger, the revelation that the Demogorgon is heading toward the Wheeler house. On to Chapter 2, The Vanishing of Holly Wheeler. The Demogorgon attacks the Wheeler parents, Karen and Ted, before kidnapping Holly into the Upside Down. Determined to save her, Eleven follows the creature through a newly opened gate and finds Hopper. In their search to find Holly, they encounter a massive wall at the edge of Hawkins. As the mystery of Holly's disappearance deepens, Robin suggests tapping into Will's psychic link to Vecna's hive mind to track Holly's whereabouts. When Will realizes he can see Vecna's targets before they're taken. Meanwhile, Nancy and Mike begin to wonder if Holly's imaginary friend, Mr. Whatsit, might be something far darker. When they ask their mother about him, Karen reveals the name of Holly's imaginary friend, Henry. The opening scene is tension-filled. The intercut between the Demogorgon attack, with Mike, Lucas, Elle, and Nancy trying to get to the Wheeler house, was really well done. As a side note, I think the special effects are really impressive this season. I know in the past that they've mixed practical effects with the special effects to great success. But I think this is all special effects, I could be wrong, and they look amazing. The Demogorgon feels alive, it looks intimidating, every detail is so crisp. Granted, they did have 2 years to perfect it. My only criticism is that they didn't kill off the Wheeler parents. Not even Ted, one of my favorite insignificant characters ever. We see Mrs. Wheeler being gurneyed into the hospital, doctors rushing to perform surgery, Mike and Nancy seem shell-shocked, but nothing on Ted. I didn't even realize he survived the attack until Lucas mentioned it. Lucas, I think we need to start a Justice for Ted campaign. Now, on to my favorite character, Steve Harrington. I like that we're seeing a bit of the jerk Harrington from Season 1, but this time it's a little different. He's being a jerk to protect his friends, instead of being a bully out of insecurity. When Steve shows concern over Nancy and her family, Jonathan seems unaffected, so he needs to tear into him. When Dustin showed up with bruises on his face, Harrington knew he was beat up. Steve had beaten up enough people to know what it looks like. So while he's concerned with his friend Dustin, he's also angry at him for going down this destructive path and missing the crawl. But I love the interplay between Steve and Dustin. They've been my favorite duo since season 2. They're the best parts of the show. Their dialogue seems so natural together. There's tension mixed with bits of comedy. They just have a great interplay. I'm actually liking a lot of the pairs so far. The Will, Robin, Joyce dynamic has been fun to watch, as Mrs. Byers clearly has very little patience for Robin. It's enjoyable to see the Wheeler kids interact, especially when they're trying to sneak through the hospital. Nancy says, "What kind of limp is that?" Mike replies, "It's a limp, a regular limp." We haven't had those moments in a long time. A couple of key moments. Another one from Steve. "Bopper, while we wait." I have never heard of boppers before. Apparently they were popular at some point in the 80s. I had to Google it. It's got a creamy peanut butter center rolled in crunchy cookie pieces or cereal with fudge chips. Sure. I do have another question for Stranger Things fans. Why is the Upside Down now habitable? In the first season, soldiers were putting on layers of protective gear as if they were going out shoveling snow in Siberia. But now, people are just traipsing around the Upside Down without masks like red staters during COVID. What's going on with that? Did they ever explain it? But the episode ends with Karen revealing Mr. What's-Its name, Henry, which brings me back to my original question. When are the parents going to put 2 and 2 together? Moving on to Chapter 3, The Turnbow Trap. Vecna, in human form as Henry Creel, sets his sights on his next victim, Holly's tormentor, Derek Turnbow. Hopper and Eleven attempt to break through the towering wall surrounding Hawkins, but are ambushed by soldiers who have a device to suppress Eleven's powers. They battle their way out, and the pair interrogate Lieutenant Akers, uncovering a chilling truth about who they're hiding at the military base. Meanwhile, Will, Nancy, and Mike decide to use Derek as bait to trap the Demogorgon, implanting a tracker into it to lead them to Holly. Armed with weapons smuggled in by Murray, and with Erica on board to sedate Derek and his family, they move the Turnbows to an abandoned barn and turn Derek's house into a deadly snare. But when Derek wakes up, chaos erupts as Will realizes the Demogorgon has already found them. Holly goes into the forest against Henry's wishes and encounters a familiar face, Max. This episode had a lot of character development. Steve and Dustin continue to have their combative relationship, which has to come to a head at some point. Robin and Will have started to pair off. I really like this mentor-mentee relationship that they've got going. In the first episode, Will witnessed Robin kissing Vicky, and while she feared that information getting out, Will was more intrigued and started asking her more about it, which harkens back to him questioning his own sexuality. I really like the scene where the group sets up the Turnbow house for the Demogorgon. It very much reminded me of Home Alone. I almost expected Joe Pesci to show up. This was the episode that Derek turned for me. Yeah, he's just an obnoxious bully in the previous episodes, but this one, he really shined. When his father passed out and he's laughing hysterically, Derek is just a funny, obnoxious character. Speaking of, we finally get a scene with Erica, and she just steals it. Her interactions with Mike and Lucas as they try and convince her to go over to the Turnbow house because her best friend is Tina. Psychopathic Erica is such a funny character. Now, this is totally a serial killer origin story. Erica is going to be on the news in 15 years, committing all sorts of atrocities. But right now, she's just friggin' funny. At the end of the episode, with the return and reveal of Max, did anyone get a sense that we were transported into a live-action version of Brave? All I'm seeing was Merida. And I don't like any of these live-action adaptations, but Disney needs to get onto that one. There is no actor better suited to perform that role. Now, the last episode in Volume 1, Chapter 4, The Sorcerer. At the abandoned barn, Derek tries to escape when Joyce attempts to move him to a safer location, but the Demogorgon attacks. They're saved when the creature is hit by Steve's beamer. Injured and retreating, Steve, Dustin, Nancy, and Jonathan follow the Demogorgon into the Upside Down. Will has a horrifying vision of Holly and 3 other children ensnared by the tentacles, with empty spaces for 8 more. Mike and Lucas arrive at the barn and inform the group that the military is rounding up children they deem as potential targets. Joyce, Will, Robin, Mike, and Lucas devise a plan where Derek will give himself up to the military and be their spy on the inside. The group will enter the Upside Down through the tunnels and follow them right under the barracks to rescue the children. Meanwhile, Max and Holly come to the realization that they're trapped inside Henry's mind and memories in a place they nickname Camazotz. Hopper and Eleven infiltrate the heavily guarded military base, determined to kill Vecna once and for all. After overpowering Dr. K and her soldiers, they make a shocking discovery. The prisoner is none other than Eleven's long-lost adopted sister, Kali. While the army base is under attack by a group of Demogorgons, Will unlocks new psychic abilities, slaying the Demogorgons to protect Mike, Lucas, and Robin, and finally taking a stand against the evil that threatens them all. But before retreating, Vecna chillingly reveals his plans to use the children as perfect vessels to reshape the world. This was an intense episode in the best possible way. We learn a lot about the lore of Henry through Max, and I have to give props to Sadie Sink, who's a tremendous actor, and she's finally given an opportunity to do something other than lie dormant in a bed. There are a few scenes included that were references to the play. It'll be interesting to see what else is incorporated because they have to know the majority of viewers would not have seen it. So if you're going to weave it into the storyline, it better make sense to everyone, not just the fortunate ones who've seen it. Maya Hawke as Robin is so good at telling fairly standard stories in the most interesting way. Her performances truly elevate the material. When she's in the tunnel with Will, talking about her own path to self-discovery, there's so much unsaid in her communication to him, but Will gets it. Derek is also hilarious in this episode. The actor Jack Connolly has so many great line readings, and I found myself laughing at that the most. If I said all the dialogue, it would not do it justice. And by the way, are they ever going to mention Derek's family again? If not, they're still passed out in the abandoned barn. That's not to say that all the writing is great. There is some clunky dialogue with Tom, Dick, and Harry in reference to The Great Escape, and as you can imagine, a couple of unnecessary, awkward innuendos. There was also a little bit of ridiculousness when making their daring escape. In what world would 3 soldiers not be able to break down a door being held back by 2 teenagers and a 9-year-old? But all that aside, it's forgiven because of that last scene. I was thinking to myself, how the hell are they going to get out of this situation? And then those Demogorgons freeze in midair. You're like, what's going on? And then they show Will Byers. What an incredible ending to this episode. Now, yeah, how is he doing that? I assume it has something to do with his connection to Vecna, but by golly, it doesn't matter. He just saved the day. That battle at the army barracks was tremendous. And it kind of scares me because with all of the chaos going on, what do they have planned for the finale that's gonna top that scene? Overall, I think Volume 1 is really strong. There are a lot of people online, and yes, I have gone down that rabbit hole of looking at some reviews, are just being nitpicky for nitpicky's sake. These are people who don't want to be happy. They just want to see the bad in everything. But I will also admit to having a low standard when it comes to entertainment. All I want to be is entertained. That's it. I don't really need deeper meanings. If you're a movie or TV series and you entertain me for an hour or 2, hats off to you, my friend. But I do have a quibble. Yes, a small quibble. And it's that I have nothing invested in Holly. I think the actress is really good. This has nothing to do with her performance as the character. This is my problem with any series. It isn't specific to Stranger Things. She has been an insignificant part of this show, so to focus the last season on her storyline and dedicate a substantial amount of time to her feels like a lost opportunity to grow the characters we already know and love. This happened in Glow Season 3, which is one of my favorite series. They spent ample chunks of 2 episodes on the character of Bobby Barnes when they could have focused that effort on the 13 women in the cast that we've grown fond of in previous seasons. I only felt the balance was off in Chapter 3 of this volume. All the other episodes did a pretty good job focusing on the core 4 and their groups. I'm definitely looking forward to rewatching these episodes again because I know that there are Easter eggs in here that I missed. I feel like Volume 2 is going to raise the stakes, and the finale is going to be epic. But there are tidbits planted in these episodes that I'm sure has a larger meaning to the overall picture that I just haven't seen yet. So what are your thoughts on Volume 1 of Stranger Things Season 5? Hit me up on social media using the hashtag MattWatchThat. That's all for this edition of Matt Watch That. Thanks for listening to me babble. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Matt Seroski. You can subscribe to my YouTube page where I'll post videos and clips from the show. If you have any opinions on what I've discussed, or suggestions as to what movie or TV pilot I should see, use the hashtag MattWatchThat on social. Head over to mattseroski.com for all the latest news and updates, and come back next time for the reviews, rants, and randomness. Steve, Robin, Jonathan, and Nancy work at WSKU. Nope, that's not it. They've been my favorite duo since Steven 2. Yeah.